Honorable Prime Ministers, Honorable Ministers of Finance, CARICOM Secretary General, distinguished delegates, representatives of the media. Good morning and welcome to this brief opening ceremony of the 6th special meeting of the Council for Finance and Planning. We will now have some short remarks from the CARICOM Secretary General, Ambassador Erwin Larocque.
Thank you, Salas. Honorable Gaston Brown, Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda and Chairman of the Council for Finance and Planning, Honorable Mia Motley, Prime Minister of Barbados, and our gracious host, Honorable Heads of Government, Ministers of Finance, and other heads of delegation, heads of regional institutions, representatives of central banks, distinguished delegates, representatives of the media. In the governance arrangements of our community, the Council of Finance and Planning has a critical role to play in advancing the CARICOM single market and economy. The revised treaty accords this Council primary responsibility for economic policy coordination, among other things. This is a prime factor in ensuring a successful CSME. The enabling economic environment required to stimulate growth and foster competitiveness in the community must complement the single market arrangements we have put in place in order to encourage economic activity and realize the beneficial impact of the CSME. In pursuing that course, we have identified those elements of a single economy in the short to medium term that would enhance the effective use and operation of the single market. In particular, we have been developing policies and legal instruments for the movement of capital, addresses the important role of deposit insurance in enhancing the financial safety net, preserving financial stability mechanisms, and the development of a regional integrated capital market. It also includes establishing a credit reporting system and regulating the operations of credit bureaus to protect the rights of borrowers. That will facilitate access to credit for supplementing income and undertaking long-term investments such as education and mortgages, as well as providing working capital for businesses. It will also provide for the cross-border exchange of credit information by member states. Our heads of government, at their meeting last July, gave a clear mandate to this Council to finalize some of these instruments by the sessional meeting in February 2019 and others by next July. These include an investment policy, an investment code, an incentives regime, an integrated capital market beginning with. I trust that the discussions today would advance this process and ensure that we fulfill the mandate of the heads of government. As a result of the negative impact of the financial and economic crisis in the past decade on our region, and in the pursuit of the CSME's goal of sustainable economic growth for our community, a Commission on the Economy was established. The Commission, within its limitations, has provided thoughtful and insightful recommendations. There is no doubt such a Commission could have a continuing role to play in confronting the challenging economic situation facing our member states. However, to adequately perform its functions, in light of the rapidly changing developments impacting our growth prospects, there is need to restructure the Commission as a body of independent experts with a time-bound mandate. The ideas of the COFAP in this regard will be instrumental in helping the Commission to deliver on such a mandate. Among the issues impinging on the prospects for growth in our community is the listing of some of our countries as non-cooperative tax jurisdictions. This meeting will receive an update on plans for a high-level mission led by our chairman to Europe to address this issue. Honorable Prime Ministers, Ministers of Finance, the success in further advancing our economic integration at this juncture is as much or even more dependent on the work of this Council than the work of the COTED. The next few hours will present the opportunity to advance this process. I thank you.
Thank you, SG. We now invite the host Prime Minister, the Right Honorable Mia Motley of Barbados, to deliver her remarks.
Thank you very much, Secretary General, Prime Ministers, colleague Prime Ministers, heads of delegation. My task this morning is very simple. The Chair is going to deliver the substantive remarks with respect to COFAP, but my task this morning is to welcome you all to Barbados, to indicate that it is our pleasure to be hosting the second COFAP meeting in 3 months, having had a break of 5 years. And I think that the mere presence of those of us here this morning indicate the seriousness with which we believe the items on the agenda have to be confronted. There is no doubt that the common difficulties that we face with respect to the blacklisting and negative listing of our countries with respect to critical aspects of our economy in terms of our financial services continues to bedevil our economic stability. There is no doubt that we cannot seek to work separately as we attract investment to our countries in a way that undermines each other's stability, and hence the need for a common community investment policy and code. There is no doubt that we need to have our financial services architecture regulated by treaty arrangements. And indeed, when we look at the investment policy code, that was first settled as far back, I think, as 2008 or 2009. So that we are talking about almost a decade in the wilderness in the absence of being able to settle some of these critical initiatives, able to access credit by putting a framework in place that protects both the individual citizen as well as the financial institution is absolutely critical if we are going to give true expression to improving the lot of our citizens. And finally, that we address issues that are fundamentally about the competitiveness of the single market, but relate to how our economy functions is also before us, because if we are going to carry the single market to the next level, then these issues have to have some advances made with respect to them. And I referred to the question of the integrated capital markets of our region. All of us are having access problems with respect to capital. Too many of our citizens in the productive sectors, too many of our companies in the productive sectors are complaining about their inability to be able to access capital in ways that make sense and at costs that make sense. And to the extent, therefore, that we can allow for the surplus liquidity in markets to be able to flow to other markets, we will have added value to our general ability to move towards greater growth in the region. And therefore, this meeting is timely, and I look forward to the substantive decisions that we will make today, recognizing that tomorrow we meet as a Prime Ministerial Subcommittee on the CSME, and therefore some of these decisions are absolutely critical to advancing the work on the single market yet again. And all of this before we meet finally for the special meeting before the end of the year. So thank you for coming. I trust and pray that Barbadian hospitality will keep your hearts warm and keep your bodies feeling even better. And to that extent, that you will want to continue to return here every time we ask you to come in the aid of the regional integration movement. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister Motley. We now invite the chair of the meeting, Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, the Honorable Gaston Brown, to give his remarks.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, to include colleague heads, ministers of finance, distinguished delegates, representatives of the media, other distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Today's meeting continues the conversation we started last July on the menu of macroeconomic support measures to complement the functioning of the market infrastructure for the CARICOM single market and economy, the CSME, which we all recognize as the platform for growth and sustainable development. We also recognize that sustainable development can only be achieved if we all grow together. To this end, we must seek to harness the collective resources of the region, financial and natural resources, as well as our human capital for the benefit of the community. We have determined that we have a shared future. This perspective prevails throughout the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas, which sets out the rights and obligations accruing to CARICOM nationals, both individuals and businesses, as they participate in the CSME. Given our individual size, our limited resources, and interdependence, our very survival depends on the continuing journey towards a single market and economy, or run the risk of being marginalized from the global trade, economic, and financial systems. While we have made progress with respect to the single market, we need greater focus on advancing the single economy, particularly in those areas which would help to support a competitive single market. Financial development is a critical factor in achieving sustainable economic development. The majority of member states are constrained in their quest for development by weak economic growth and high levels of unsustainable debt. The CARICOM region is regarded as one of the most heavily indebted regions in the world. At the end of 2017, average debt level in the region exceeded 70%, with the majority of countries having debt-to-GDP ratios exceeding the international benchmark of 60% of GDP. Moreover, our countries are extremely vulnerable to natural hazards and climate change events, as evident in the considerable damage caused by the 2017 hurricane season. Declining government revenues and the need to pursue fiscal consolidation measures limit the ability of these member states to invest in the economy. And we all know too that our countries, or our governments for that matter, have had to repeatedly invest in damaged infrastructure, utilizing scarce resources that could have been otherwise employed for productive services. The financing deficit in the region has been exacerbated by the graduation of member states to middle income status and by an overall decline in foreign capital flows. Weak sovereign credit ratings have also severely reduced these countries' access to international private capital markets and increased borrowing costs. Our financial cooperation initiatives are therefore aimed at mobilizing financial resources within the community and on attracting capital from new sources by enhancing the fiscal and investment regimes. It is against such a background that it is imperative for us to pursue urgently the efforts to advance the necessary legal measures to complete those initiatives. It is taking us far too long to finalize the instruments which have been before our councils for many years. Instead of flagging and flogging the issues, let us recommit to a more efficacious implementation of regional policy initiatives. Even as we procrastinate, outside forces are also contributing to our challenges. The financial services sector in CARICOM states is part of our diversification efforts and is a significant revenue stream in assisting our developmental thrust. It is now under threat as it confronts the rapidly changing regulatory landscape in the sector and international tax matters. We are concerned that such organizations as the Financial Stability Board and the OECD are claiming to set global standards without countries such as ours having a voice in the process. While the CARICOM states are supportive of global initiatives to promote greater tax transparency and more responsible tax practices, we continue to be concerned about the extent of the reforms that have been mandated and demanded, as well as the ambitious timeline for executing such reforms. Today, we will discuss our approach to the European authorities as a community to advocate against the unilateral demands made by the European Union Council against the threat of blacklisting and withdrawal of European development support to our countries. The required reforms have significant implications for the future of the financial services sector in many of our countries. We therefore require time to determine and examine the options for reform that are available to us in accordance with our national and regional goals and objectives. Further, there appears to be a move away from multilateralism, as some countries seem unwilling to comply with the dictates of globally recognized standard-setting bodies. This is happening at a time when the vulnerability of small countries has become even more pronounced. The rise of unilateralism is manifested in the willingness of some countries to embrace their own brand of economic nationalism, which seeks to place their own interests above that of a shared interests in promoting global peace and prosperity. This is not a sustainable path, as such action threatens to dismantle regional and global power sharing and arbitration mechanisms that serve the international community well and ensure some degree of equity and fairness for all countries. Colleagues, the task before us is particularly challenging, given our limited resources. I therefore urge that as we consider the various issues before us, that we commit to leaving here with workable solutions to realize the promise of the CSME as we seek to create better opportunities for our citizens. Our success depends on us leveraging our collective creativity, our talent, expertise, and resources to address the problems which bedevil us. I have every confidence that we will be equal to the task. Thank you very much, Mr. Master of Ceremony and colleagues.
Thank you, Prime Minister Brown, and also thank you, host Prime Minister Motley, for your welcome, and Secretary General Larocque for your remarks. We now get down to the important matters in front of us, but we'll give the media a few minutes to take a few more pictures and depart.